So what you're looking at here is a monument to what are called the Hero Cities of the Great Patriotic War, or World War II, the Great Patriotic Cities of the USSR that defended against Nazi Germany. Or at least that was what it used to be. About a month ago, or about 6 weeks ago, in what was an enormous middle finger to the Russians, the Ukrainians took each and every one of these plaques that corresponded to one of these USSR hero cities, and they took down the plaques to any of them that were located in Russia or indeed in Belarus. That is a huge insult because, of course, the Second World War is something that looms very large on Russia's cultural sense of identity. And the Ukrainians know exactly what they were doing by doing that. Now, that happened in late April. And I had heard about it then, and I wanted to come here and see it. Now, in the subsequent time, apparently what they've done is not only have they taken away the names of places like Moscow or Leningrad or Stalingrad, and they have replaced them with names of towns from the current war. So here we have Kharkiv, here we have Mykolaiv. I mean, the Ukrainians are almost experts at hitting on these nerve points that the Russians have about the tensions between these two nations. And no doubt, this, if it was widely publicized within Russia, was cause for great insult. Which is kind of the point. So my current situation is this. I have not been posting this week because I've been preoccupied with changing my current status. I have applied to, and it does appear I've been granted an extension on my ability to stay within Ukraine for another full 90 days. And during that period of time, I'll see about even extending it beyond that, because I fear this war will not be ended by August, which is what my 90-day extension will take me through. Now, in getting that extension, I've kind of reevaluated what it is I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to continue doing these vlogs. I'm going to do a little bit more comprehensive stuff, a little bit more stuff off of the front lines. I'm going to let the networks and the agencies bring you that kind of stuff. Maybe I'll do some analysis of it, what it all means. But in addition to that, I'm going to talk about, as I have been doing, a greater depth of understanding of what is happening here and a bigger picture of why this war is possibly the most important war I will ever cover as a journalist in my life, and one of the most important wars that will have happened in most of your lives. I stand by that statement. So I am open to hearing what your interests are and what topics you would like to have covered. I want to do this much more interactive with you guys. I want feedback in terms of the topics that you want me to cover. I've got some things in the fire, some irons in the fire that hopefully will come to fruition in the next week or two or so. I'm going to be keeping an apartment here in Kiev, and I will be keeping my apartment in Lviv as well, and kind of be moving back and forth between them, as well as potentially some other locations around the country. So I'm going to be moving a lot more around this country and exploring a lot more of what's going on, but always keeping in mind that I'm not going to try and duplicate what the networks are doing. I'm going to try and do something a little bit more in-depth and nuanced and, as I say, comprehensive. So I hope you'll stay with me. I hope you'll spread the word. I'd love to have a larger audience than I do, because I think I have a certain perspective here that not everybody does that kind of parachutes in here. So I chose this location actually for a couple of different reasons, and one of them is this. I was very much preoccupied in the last week or so with my own logistical situation, setting up a second base of operations in Kiev, extending my right to stay within Ukraine through the authorities, and it didn't allow me to focus on another thing that happened this week, and I'd like to address it now, and that is notably the summit in Davos, with a lot of people fixated not only on the food crisis that might be looming, but also wondering when an end to this war might come and what the conditions of a negotiated peace might be. And you saw a lot of talk by a lot of different people about how there needs to be some sort of appeasement to Russia, away from Putin, to save face. And notably, you saw Kissinger saying stuff like that. And the reaction here in Kiev was not one of surprise. As a matter of fact, that's why I've chosen this spot, because Ukrainians know their history. And sadly, it does appear as though history is repeating itself in terms of the geopolitical interests that are being played out here on the ground. And so here is Kiev, a monument to the Second World War, hero city status of Kiev. But here is Irpin, now gaining its place as a hero city in this current war. The Ukrainians are very much aware that they are living history, that what is happening currently is the culmination of centuries of great gamesmanship being played out on this territory. The difference is they're sovereign, and they're not going to give that up. So any talk of the Ukrainians ceding territory to the Russians, it gets their back up, because they see that there are powers that are interested in a bigger picture and their own interests on a geopolitical stage, but it's played out here. Now, they're happy to fight this war. They know that it's their war to fight and to win. But they will not be dictated to by anybody, not by Brussels, not by Berlin, not by Paris, not by Rome, not by DC, and certainly not by Russia, not by Moscow. That is essential to this entire thing. So the reaction to Kissinger's statements, for example, really rankled a lot of Ukrainians, because they said, it's not up to you. It's not your decision to make. Yes, you're giving us weapons, and we appreciate it. And, clearly there's an international effort here that's supporting us. But at the end of the day, this is our country, and we'll decide for ourselves. But I fear that history is repeating itself on the continent, because, you see the Europeans falling into their same kind of positions as they have held about Ukraine for centuries. The Germans, I fear, are starting to wake up to the realization that a powerful sovereign state in Ukraine that potentially could become part of the European Union, with all the hurdles that they would have to overcome. But if they did join the European Union, the balance of power on the continent would shift significantly. This place has the potential to be a massive GDP earner for the European Union. This place has the potential to really shake and tip the balance of power within Europe. And the French know it, the Germans know it, and of course the Brits know it. There's a reason, I suspect, why the British are so gung-ho to support what's happening here, because they like to see a continent in disarray. Now we're in a completely different stage of history, post-World War II. There's a European Union and all that, so it's not always the same. But, I do see these games being played out that are so similar to games that have been played out in past centuries and decades. And don't get me wrong here, don't get me wrong. All of those powers recognize that the most important imminent threat is an aggressive, autocratic Russia under Putin. That is first and foremost. But take, for example, the idea of what it would mean for a union separate from the EU between Lithuania, Poland, and a sovereign Ukraine. And that idea has already been floated. And that would mean a block of power, trading, diplomatic, political, that would stretch all the way from the Baltic down to the Black Sea and ultimately the Mediterranean. How would that change things? As for the Americans, well, the Americans just want to see Russia diminished. On a global stage, again, that is their primary interest, and the Ukrainians know that too. But what's interesting here for me, again, is that while they see all of these games being played out and they realize that those various capitals, they're really interested in their own future. Well, Kiev can play that game too. When this war is over, the potential for this country, having gone through a baptism of fire, and there is going to be a demand for real change here and real significant progress. And I suspect they're going to get it. So the corruption that has held them down may disappear. And the infrastructure and the investment potential in this country is going to be massive. So, looking at a geopolitical question of what does this mean? What does this mean for Ukraine? What does this mean for the continent? And what does this mean for the globe? This is going to shake things up massively. I may do a longer form version of this, and I might kind of approach it with more graphics and things like that, but I wanted to get that out today in the shadow of Davos. Look for Ukraine emerging from this fight as a phoenix, risen from the flames. It's going to challenge an awful lot of the status quo of this country.